All right, we're back. We have a number of agencies to go through today. Elliot Edelson. State Retirement Agency, Jason Kramer is our analyst. Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jason Kramer, and I'll be presenting the analysis for the State Retirement Agency. The SRA, at the direction of the Board of Trustees, has primary responsibility over the state's retirement systems. The fiscal 2025 allowance, as you can see here on the first page of the analysis, is $58.8 million, an increase of $4.5 million from fiscal 2024. The agency is funded through an administrative charge on all employers for whom the agency administers retirement benefits. State agencies account for roughly 1/3 of SRA's funding, while local school boards and governmental units make up the rest of the budget funding. You'll notice that the fund split is different in this year's allowance, which I'll discuss shortly in this presentation. The investment division is non-budgeted and makes up 40% of the allowance. I will turn next to Exhibit 1 on page 4. Exhibit 1 shows membership in the state's retirement system by active employees and retirees. For the first time since 2010, the number of active members grew by more than the number of retirees in the system. To Exhibit 3 on page 6, this shows the SRA's call center wait times. The agency has struggled for several years to meet wait time and drop call goals. Recent wait times have been just under 5 minutes on average, more than the 3-minute average goal. SRA attributes the issue primarily to high turnover and staffing shortages. The allowance does add a member services administrator who will focus on customer service issues, including call center performance. Exhibit 5 on page 8 compares the fiscal 2025 budget to fiscal 2024. Within the administration division, the cost increases are due primarily to statewide cost of living salary increases. Other large changes are due to ongoing costs associated with the completion of the MPAS 3 major IT project. As mentioned earlier and shown here at the top of Exhibit 5, the budget includes no reimbursable funds, and instead the administration division is entirely composed of special funds. SRA states this is due to changes made in Chapter 194 of 2023, which alter the timing of calculating administrative fees paid by employers. However, DLS doesn't believe that this should impact the fund split of the budget. As in prior years, administrative fees are budgeted in every other state agency for their share of the costs, and those costs are remitted to SRA. DLS recommends reducing the SRA special fund allowance by the amount of the fees that are budgeted in state agencies, and adding language allowing those funds to be used by SRA. To be clear, this recommendation would have no material impact on SRA's budget. Rather, it's about accurately budgeting expenses. Currently, these fees are being double counted in the budget. Page 10, personnel. SRA adds 7 positions, including the member services coordinator mentioned earlier. 3 of these positions will be in the finance division to address delays in reporting, and 3 would expand access to training that is provided to retirees, employers, and SRA staff. The first issue I'll discuss on page 11 is about the system's performance. Exhibit 6 here shows the state's investment performance in fiscal 2023 by asset allocation. Total fund performance was a positive 3.67%, and system assets totaled $65.2 billion at the close of fiscal 2023. Exhibit 8 on page 14 compares the system to benchmarks. While the system did not meet its assumed rate of return, it did beat its return benchmark by nearly 1 percentage point. Exhibit 10 on page 16 shows the system's funding levels since 2006. The system closed fiscal 2023 with a 74.7% funded ratio. That's the first decline in the funded ratio since pension reforms. SRA projects being 80% actuarially funded by fiscal 2030, 3 years later than was projected last year. And finally, to issue 2 at the bottom of page 16 and continuing on to page 17, I'll discuss some outdated statutory requirements that have required a reduction in pension funding in recent years. The provision in state statute requires a reduction in the employer contribution by the amount of fees paid by local boards of education and community colleges. This provision is a remnant of the pension plan's prior structure of including fees in the employer rates, and was done in order to avoid double charging the boards of education and community colleges. In fiscal 2024, this reduction was $21 million, or is estimated to be $21 million. Since the state has been making a supplemental contribution of typically $75 million in recent years, the funding has been actuarially adequate to the pension systems. However, were the state to stop the supplemental contribution, funding would fall a little bit short. DLS recommends adopting legislation that would remove this requirement to reduce the appropriation. And then on page 18 is DLS's recommendation that I mentioned earlier to reduce special funds and add language allowing funds to be transferred to SRA. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for the great analysis. Any questions for our analyst? Okay, seeing none, I think our treasurer is with us and his team. Our executive director, Martin Novin. Welcome. Mr. Treasurer, great to see you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I feel like I'm in class. To my right, as was mentioned earlier, is Mr. Martin Novins, the Executive Director of the Maryland State Retirement and Pension Systems. He's going to do the bulk of the testifying before you today, but I just wanted to get us started real quick, just by saying, first of all, we've undergone a lot this past year, a lot of change. Obviously, we welcomed a new vice chair, the comptroller Lehrman, a new budget secretary, as well as 3 new trustees. And I anticipate some more changes as we've gone through some vacancies, some resignations in recent weeks. What I'd also like to just sort of illuminate a little bit for you that as it relates to the board, we are 100% committed to serving our members, our retirees, and our beneficiaries. The pension system now has over 420,000 members, retirees, and beneficiaries. And then when you start to, include spouses and children and dependent parents, we're serving now more than 1 million Marylanders or 1 million people through this fund. And we take that responsibility very, very seriously. We know that our hardworking parents and children, that they've paid into this fund and they rely on it for those golden years. So we're taking every precaution that we can. We are being the wise stewards that you require us to be. And the fund is doing well. There are some things that we're going to continuously improve upon. We'll at some point we'll touch upon that later. We're laser focused on getting our fees down to what we believe is a fair and appropriate level. And again, we're going to continue to make those continuous improvements. And as things come up, obviously we'll keep this committee informed. So with that, I will turn it over to our executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Thank you for having me, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and the committee. First, I'd like to start by commending Jason Kramer on a fantastic analysis. Thank you again this year. We appreciate all of your great work and how well you work with our staff. And we concur with your recommendations, the analyst recommendations. We do the 2 recommendations that he set forth. We agree with as well, and we also do apologize. There was a budgeting error that was referenced as well that was due to some miscommunication on our part. We apologize for that miscommunication. The system remains on pace. I know it was reported, and rightfully so, that we're not going to be 80% funded as quickly because we've had some, mostly pay raises and COLA increases that were unanticipated and some investment returns that missed the 6.8% assumed rate of return. So those combined will cause us to, 2 things. 1, increase contributions, which has to happen to keep us on pace to be 100% funded by 2039. But we are on pace, and we will be, we'll fully amortize that unfunded liability that we've been working on for so many years by 2035. But that number doesn't just go straight up. We have years that go up and down, and the employer contributions go up and down to a modest amount, which is important. The contribution this year is still less than what was projected when the reforms in 2018 were passed. Anyway, so the 2019 reforms were passed. So anyway, so the 2019 reforms were passed. Anyway, so the 2019 reforms were passed. So 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 anyway, so the 2019 Reforms are projecting a 20.15 employee contribution based on payroll. And this year we're at 19.15. Now that is more than the 17.88 that we had last year. So employer contributions were going down based on the investment returns and our overall experiences. Now they've gone up a little bit. The total increase in employer contributions this year is $352.6 million, which is, I understand, a hit to employers. And the three reasons, again, for that increase was the larger than anticipated salary increases. The cost of living increases were higher than anticipated. Those two factors accounted for 3/4 of the increase in the employer contributions, and the 3.67 investment return compared to the 6.8 investment return that made up for the other 1/4 of those increases. And then in addition to making sure that we're prudently handling our funded status and that we're on track to retire that unfunded liability and also to manage our investments prudently, we are really prioritizing member services and focusing on member services. And that's the reason for the member services administrator that's included in the budget. We need to start acting more like other entities that are using multiple different tools to service our members. So right now we have a call center, which is great. We're always going to want to have a call center. We're always going to want people to be able to call and get the help that they need. The problem occurs when people don't have other tools they can use to access us and get their answers. So then the people who can't use computers are in the same queue with all the people who would use other tools if we gave it to them. And that's what causes the higher wait times, and abandonment rates and all the other things that I know we've talked about over the years. I will say, I don't think a 3% goal is very aggressive for a call center. We may need to revamp our goals a little bit. We would never want to have a call center that had no wait time whatsoever. Well, we would, but you probably wouldn't want us to have a call center that had no wait time whatsoever, because that would mean we'd be overstaffed and would have people sitting around doing nothing at other times of the day, right? So there's having some calls. A call center needs some wait time, right? So we don't have people sitting around doing nothing when calls aren't coming in. It's simply the nature. But what we need to do is do more things like we did with MySRPS, which we have 40% of our members now on the online system, and they're able to do so much work so efficiently, so much more quickly than they could if they had to jump in a call queue and have someone else help them. I mean, one of the major things that system does, I know you've heard about this system, but is the fact that you can process all the retirement estimates. There are other systems around the nation where it can take 2 or 3 months to get an estimate, and you limit what participants can get for estimates to know what they can actually be looking forward to in retirement, because if those manual processes are incredibly inefficient. And so it's a prime example of not only giving better service to our members, but also doing it much more efficiently and not using the staff resources that it would take to process all those manually. But what we really want to do is also do more communication to our members. When I first took this job, I was told that we don't send out too many communications to our members, because if we do send out the communications to our members, people are going to start calling us more. And if they call us more, our hold times are going to go up. And then we're going to get down to Annapolis, and everyone's going to ask us why our abandonment rates are up and why our call centers now, call center rates, the hold times are up. And so we need to change the script a little bit, right? We need to be communicating with our members. The goal isn't to make sure that we have the shortest call times. That's not our primary goal. Our primary goal is to educate our members. The primary goal is to make sure all of our members know what benefits they're going to get so they can prepare appropriately for retirement, and that they know how to use the system and how to access the system. So we're going to be doing a lot more of that. And that may change some of what we do at the call center. But we also need to find when people call in, if the wait time's high, we need to give them recorded messages like a lot of other entities do, potentially some sort of chat function. We need to start exploring the tools that we can use to clear out the queue when we're serving our members. So the people who are remaining are the people who really need that one-on-one service on the phone, or a counseling appointment, or a presentation to a big group of people. So we need to really figure out how to take a multifaceted approach to member services. That's really what we're here for, is to serve our members. The investment returns are essential to serving our members, but we're doing that so we have something to pay our members. All the work we do on making sure that we're on track to be fully funded, that's also we can provide services to our members. So I just that's one major goal of mine, staff, and I believe the board at this point too, is to make sure that we're doing what we're here to do, and we're not missing that member services part after we've fixed all these other things that people have worked so hard to fix. So with that, we'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Any questions for our treasurer, our executive director? Delegate Lewis.
Thank you. It's always good to see our good friend Treasurer Davis, and Martin, your team with Ann at State Retirement. You do a phenomenal job. My question, I'm looking over at the internship costs. I know that's something that you guys have been developing for a while. I just wanted to hear kind of, how many interns did you have? Do you recruit? Where did you recruit them from? Are any from our HBCUs in particular? We obviously have been talking about diversifying the workforce of the folks who help to manage our money. And I just wanted to see if you can opine on that a little bit.
I'm going to ask Bob Bird to come up. He's our deputy CIO.
Sure.
And
Hi,
he'll have
Bob.
definitely more information about that program.
Good afternoon. Yeah, so we try to hire a couple interns each summer. And we have interacted with the local institutions. We actually have an arrangement with the United Negro College Fund. And we have hired an intern through them. We didn't do it last year because something fell through the cracks, but we hope to continue to engage with them in the future.
If I think that's great. United Negro College Fund is a phenomenal organization. I would encourage there to be a conversation with the HBCUs in the state of Maryland directly too. I think they would welcome those conversations.
Delegate, you're absolutely correct, and we will be doing that.
Thank you. Delegate Spiegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask about how our funded ratio in relation to unfunded liabilities ranks compared to other states. My sense is from data in the 2021, 2022 timeframe, Maryland is sort of comfortably in the mid-range. And I understand there are a lot of reasons why you're not trying to immediately address all unfunded liabilities in any given year. But I was just curious if you all had a sense as to where Maryland is relative to other states today. Thank you.
Yes, we are. As you said, we are in the median, but we're towards the top half of the median. And that's true even though we reduced our assumed rate of return a few years ago. So when you reduce the assumption of what you're going to earn, that actually reduces your funded status based on that assumption. So the fact that we're actually responsibly lower than our peers in terms of our assumed rate of return and slightly higher in terms of our total funded ratio is exactly where you want to be. You don't want to be far from the median, because if you are, then there's a generational kind of risk equity argument, right? We don't want to solve the problem today and have the next generation, too much on this generation versus the next, right? You want to do it all in that measured pace. So I think we're right where we should be on both those metrics.
Great, thank you. See any other questions? Mr. Treasurer, Mr. Novin, Mr. Bird, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great
Everyone
weekend.
have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks. We'll now turn to Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans. Jason Kramer again is our analyst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll now be presenting the analysis for the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans. MSRP provides employees with 4 supplemental retirement plan options and funds its operations with a fee on member accounts. MSRP's fiscal 2025 allowance of $2.5 million in special funds is a slight increase from fiscal 2024, as you can see here on the first page of the analysis. Turning to Exhibit 1 on page 2 shows agency spending in the fiscal 2025 allowance. As you can see, 3/4 of the spending is for personnel, with other costs mostly for contractual services and rent. Now, the first issue I'll discuss starts on page 4. And the last session, the General Assembly enacted Chapter 100 of 2023, which mandated that the state provide a match of up to $600 for state employees participating in a supplemental retirement plan. And the state also added the legislature also added $12 million in general funds to the budget for that purpose in fiscal 2024. On page 5, Exhibit 3, you can see the final two rows that the match has driven growth in the program as shown here, with 9% growth in the number of contributing members in fiscal 2023 and similar growth projected in fiscal 2024 and 2025. On page 6, Exhibit 4 shows the plan expenses and revenues. Participant fees that fund the agency are 50 cents per month and 0.11% of assets. MSRP estimates a closing balance of 27% of expenses in fiscal 2024, which is near its target goal of the amount in reserve. And finally, on page 8, DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for the great analysis. Any questions for the analyst? Let's see any. Thank you, Jason. Let's turn to the agency. Rhonda Bell is with us. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. We are happy to be here representing Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans. I am Rhonda Bell, the Executive Director, and with me today is Nakia Smith, our Acting Deputy Executive Director and CFO. We are happy that Mr. Kramer has done an excellent job again this year, and we're thankful and grateful to hear that he has concurred with the governor's allowance. So we are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Ms. Bell or her team? Okay, great job. Have a good
Thank you.
weekend. Thanks for being with us. You concur in the governor's allowance. See you. Thanks, Jason. All right, Maryland Cannabis Administration, their first budget hearing, I think. Victoria Martinez is with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Victoria Martinez, and I'll be presenting the Maryland Cannabis Administration analysis. The Maryland Cannabis Administration works to create an equitable, safe, and accessible medical and adult use cannabis program, primarily through overseeing licensing and regulation. As you can see on the first page of the analysis, the fiscal 2025 allowance increases by $5.7 million, or 21.8%. to a total of $32.1 million. MCA is primarily funded through special funds through the Cannabis Regulation and Enforcement Fund. Continuing on page 2, there is a $2 million reversion for the Social Equity Partnership Grant Program, which is the entire appropriation for that program in fiscal 2024. MCA reported that for that program to get off the ground, the next round of licenses needs to be issued. And since they're currently in that process, there's not enough time to roll out those funds. There's one proposed deficiency of $2.8 million for cannabis enforcement activities provided by the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission. MCA and ATCC have a memorandum of understanding for their collaboration on cannabis enforcement activities, where MCA holds authority over licensed cannabis businesses, while ATCC holds authority over unlicensed operators. Exhibit 1 on page 3 shows an overview of agency spending in fiscal 2025. The two largest expenditures are $11.8 million for personnel and $8.9 million for contractual services in the general administration program, including contracts for public health education and the patient application system. Exhibit 2 on page 4 shows the breakdown of the $5.7 million increase, with the largest change being the $5 million mandated for the Social Equity Partnership Program to promote partnerships that support social equity licensees. Other large changes are within the research and education program, including a $1.4 million increase for public health education and a $1.2 million decrease relating to mandated studies of adult use cannabis impact. In terms of personnel, there are no additional regular positions in the allowance, so that remains stable at 110, but there is an increase of 6 contractual positions. MCA currently has 11 vacant positions, but they anticipate filling the majority of these positions in fiscal 2024. The first key observation discussed on page 7 focuses on the establishment and the organization of the Maryland Cannabis Administration. The agency was established in the Cannabis Reform Act of 2023, which also legalized adult use cannabis, and their main purpose is to license and regulate the cannabis industry. The agency is organized into 3 major programs, including general administration, regulation, enforcement, and compliance, and the Office of Social Equity. The Office of Social Equity is an independent unit that functions within MCA that works to promote economic opportunity and social equity in the adult use cannabis industry to positively impact communities that have been disproportionately affected by cannabis criminalization. The second key observation, starting on page 8, discusses the licensing process and the estimated growth in licenses. MCA issues 3 categories of licenses, including growers, processors, and dispensaries. The first licenses were granted to medical cannabis businesses that converted their licenses upon the legalization of adult use cannabis. In terms of the license process, applicants need to submit an application along with, along with operational business and diversity plans. Applications are reviewed on a pass-fail basis, so any applicant that meets minimum qualifications is placed in a lottery conducted by regions and by license category and type. MCA then reviews the applicants selected in the lottery and issues conditional awards. The first licensing round is currently ongoing and was only for social equity applicants. The application period closed in December of 2023, and MCA reported receiving 1,708 applications, and they are issuing up to 179 licenses. As shown in Exhibit 3 on page 10, there are currently 169 licenses, and this first application round is estimated to more than double the number of cannabis businesses. The last key observation on page 11 discusses the increase in cannabis sales and the decrease in cost per gram of cannabis. Adult use cannabis is subject to a 9% sales and use tax rate. Exhibit 4 shows total sales and average cost of cannabis trends, with an increase to 780 million in total sales in 2023 and an expected increase to 1.3 billion in 2025. The average cost per gram of cannabis has generally decreased, with the average cost currently at $9.21. Exhibit 5 on page 12 shows the split of year-to-date medical and adult use cannabis sales, with the majority, about 58% of sales, still being medical cannabis sales. Since adult use cannabis was legalized in July of 2023, the adult use cannabis sales are from the 6-month period from July to December, while the medical cannabis sales are from that entire year. Exhibit 6 on the same page shows the monthly sales from August to December 2023, with medical sales remaining stable while adult use sales steadily increasing per month. Finally, our recommendation is that we concur with the governor's allowance. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martinez. I think this is your first presentation to the full committee, so welcome and great analysis. Any questions for our analyst? Okay, thank you so much. We'll now turn to our agency, William Tilburg. Welcome. Former analyst. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Missed you guys.
Miss you too.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Will Tilburg, Acting Director for the Maryland Cannabis Administration, joined, as you know, by Andrew Garrison, who previously was on the other side here, and we're very grateful for his services. I want to thank Victoria Martinez for the great job she did. That makes our work much easier in what we need to share. I do want to recognize some staff that are here with the Cannabis Administration. First, Ugo Uso, who is our CFO. and Mark Adia, who's a budget specialist that recently joined us. And then our partners at the new Office of Social Equity, which is an independent unit within MCA. So we provide shared services, HR, IT type of stuff, but they are independent in decision-making. The executive director, Audrey Johnson, is here, as is the deputy director, Courtney Davis. So thank you again to Victoria. Also, our DBM analyst, Ann Davis, is here, and she's done a great job. We're a new agency that has been able to lean on her expertise, and so appreciative of that. We did have brief prepared remarks, but it's Pro Forma Friday. I saw the reaction that Ms. Bell just got, so we will leave it there for any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to come back to section 19, the part where we allocated essentially 2 million to the Office of Social Equity. That was reverted. And I think the rationale was that it couldn't be meaningful time to roll out the program, et cetera. So what does that mean? Are y'all going to utilize those funds? You're going to roll them out? Can you provide us an update as to what y'all plan on doing with that?
Yes, the Social Equity Partnership Grant Program was a 2 million mandate in 24 and it's a 5 million mandate ongoing. We intend to spend the 5 million ongoing. It's a general funds. The licensing round is hopefully concluding next month. And so given that we would only have 3 months of 24 yet, we don't expect a lot of those businesses to be operational and be able to enter those meaningful partnerships. But beginning 25, we think those funds will be fully prescribed. And there was an opportunity for some general fund savings in 24.
So you all intend on utilizing those funds?
Correct.
Okay.
Delegate Edelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all. Great to see you. I wanted to ask you about one of the final things that the excellent analyst mentioned to us, which is that as the sales of adult use seems to have increased over the course of the first 6 months, the sales of medical seems to have stayed around steady. I'm curious if your projections show that continuing in a similar state, that medical will stay steady per month, or if ultimately we'll see a drop off as adult use continues to increase.
Thank you, Delegate. It varies among jurisdictions. So Maryland's not the first to have transitioned from medical only to medical and adult use. We're number 20 in that. So there is some evidence that we can look to. By and large, the medical population declines over time, but that's not happened exclusively. There are examples of states where it has stayed the same or grown slightly. And part of it depends on protections that are put in place for the medical program. And within the Cannabis Reform Act, there were pretty robust protections of dedicated service lines and hours for medical patients, certain types of products that are more medicinal in nature being exclusive to medical patients, those types of things. And so we would think that it's going to decrease, but not as dramatically as it has in other jurisdictions, which is up to 50% decline.
Got it. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you both for being with us and congratulations on a great start. We'll look forward to, as this sort of new program develops, getting more updates from you over the years, and have a good weekend.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. All right, committee, that concludes our briefing. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your Friday.